Lakers fans, I want you to look at two specific numbers before I tell you exactly what happened today, because together they explain everything you need to know about how this decision actually got made. 12.8 points per game, 34.3% shooting from the field. Those are De'Aaron Fox's actual numbers from the 2026 NBA Finals, a series San Antonio lost to the Knicks in 5 games. And right next to those numbers, on the same roster in the same series, a rookie named Dylan Harper averaged 18 points a game on 49.3% shooting. Read those two lines back to back. That is the exact reason Brian Wright's front office has spent the entire month since that finals loss publicly insisting they remain committed to Fox as their franchise point guard, while multiple national outlets have simultaneously run headline after headline asking whether trading him is now unavoidable. Public confidence, private numbers telling a completely different story. And at 11:52 this morning on a live NBA Today segment, Shams Charania walked onto the desk and told the entire basketball world that the gap between San Antonio's public position and its actual internal reality had finally closed. De'Aaron Fox has been traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. Before you scroll off, I'm telling you right now, by the end of this video, I'm going to tell you the specific reasoning Shams gave for why San Antonio moved now, barely weeks after Fox signed a $229 million extension that hasn't even technically kicked in yet. I'm also going to tell you what Victor Wembanyama posted from his personal account in French 16 minutes later, a message ESPN's own translators had to spend real airtime unpacking. Stay with me. Do not click off. Here's how it went down. Malika Andrews is mid-segment discussing Summer League standouts when her earpiece clearly detonates with real urgency. She stops mid-sentence. We have to go to Shams. This is significant. Please stand by. And they cut. Shams delivers, and this is the direct transcript. I want to be precise about the timing here, because on the surface, trading a player barely weeks after extending him for $229 million looks almost impossible to justify. My understanding is that San Antonio's front office, in the weeks since that finals loss, has been running an unusually direct film-based evaluation of exactly what went wrong against New York, and the conclusion that evaluation reached internally was blunt. Dylan Harper's on-court impact alongside Wembanyama in that series was simply superior to Fox's, not by a marginal amount, but by a margin significant enough to reshape how the front office views the timeline going forward. Once Rob Pelinka called with an offer built around draft compensation and matching salary, San Antonio's front office moved decisively. This trade is agreed to in principle. It uses cap mechanics that specifically account for the extension's exact structure, which is part of why it took several full weeks to actually finalize rather than happening immediately in the days right after the finals ended. Read that back. Simply superior to Fox's, not by a marginal amount. That is Shams delivering a specific, blunt internal conclusion, not a vague, generic sense of dissatisfaction floating around the organization, but a direct comparative judgment. San Antonio's own coaching and analytics staff reportedly reached about 2 specific players sharing the exact same position on the same roster. And 16 minutes later, exactly as I promised you at the top of this video, Victor Wembanyama posted from his personal account in French, and the phrasing mattered enough that ESPN's own broadcast dedicated real airtime to unpacking it. The post read, "Le jeu change, mais l'objectif reste le même." Translated, the game changes, but the objective stays the same. Read that back. That is not a warm farewell. That is not a tribute post. That is a deliberately neutral, almost clinical statement from the single most important player in that organization, choosing his words with obvious care rather than editorializing on a teammate's departure, while still confirming through the act of posting at all that the situation carries real weight inside that locker room. Let's take a moment to actually look at what Fox represented for San Antonio when this partnership began, because the full arc of this story matters for understanding why today's reversal feels so significant. When the Kings traded him to the Spurs back in February of 2025, it was framed almost universally as the move that would finally pair Victor Wembanyama with a genuine, established lead guard capable of unlocking his full offensive gravity. A co-star transaction, not a role player addition. Fox himself spoke publicly at the time about the genuine excitement of building something entirely new in San Antonio, embracing exactly the kind of primary partner role Sacramento had never fully built around him during his years there. That context makes today's outcome land with genuinely real weight, because it isn't simply a disappointing player quietly being moved along in a routine transaction. It's the second time in under 2 years that a serious big swing partnership built specifically around his individual talent has been fully dissolved by the very organization that constructed it in the first place. Now, the whiplash. Because I already know exactly what you're thinking right now, having watched this exact contradiction play out in real time over the past several weeks. Fox just signed a $229 million extension. Brian Wright told reporters multiple times this summer that the team was committed to him. How does a max-level financial commitment turn into a trade this fast? And here's the honest answer, and it requires understanding something that happens constantly in professional sports. A front office's public statements are frequently a step behind its actual evolving internal evaluation, specifically to protect trade leverage and avoid distracting an already fragile locker room during a genuinely difficult offseason stretch. Wright wasn't lying when he said the team was committed. He was describing where the organization stood at that specific moment, before a full, honest film study of the finals loss reshaped the calculus. Once that internal conclusion crystallized, the extension itself, still unfired in terms of actual guaranteed money before the season starts, became less of an obstacle than fans assumed. Stay with me. Because once you understand exactly why Fox fits this specific Lakers roster, this stops looking like financial chaos and starts looking like the single most logical outcome hiding behind a contract technicality. 3 reasons Shams was this confident. Reason 3 is where the reveal lands. Reason number 1. Since LeBron's departure to Philadelphia, the Lakers have been missing a genuine second ball handler who can operate independently of Luka Doncic across an 82-game season and a demanding playoff run. De'Aaron Fox, even coming off a rough final stretch, remains a legitimate 2-time All-Star point guard capable of bringing the ball up, initiating offense, and creating his own shot at an elite level when healthy and confident. That is precisely the archetype this roster has lacked since Luka's arrival, and it was simply not available anywhere else on the trade market this summer at this specific talent level. Reason number 2, and this is the tactical detail specific to why JJ Redick's coaching staff reportedly views this addition so favorably. Fox's transition speed, genuinely among the fastest in the league with the ball in his hands, is the single element this roster has lacked most acutely under a Luka-centric half-court offense. Adding a guard who can push pace, generate easy transition buckets, and take pressure off Luka's shot creation burden across a full season gives Redick an entirely different offensive gear. And before I get to reason 3, because reason 3 is the internal document Shams referenced, talk to me in the comments. Lakers fans, real question. Does the specific comparison to a rookie outperforming Fox in the finals worry you about what you're actually getting? Or do you believe a documented ankle issue from that series explains the disparity? Go. Reason number 3, the document. Ready? San Antonio's own coaching and analytics staff reportedly reached that specific comparative conclusion. Read that back. This is not speculation about vibes or locker room chemistry. This is a report about a specific internal film-based evaluation that the Spurs' own staff conducted, and that evaluation, according to Shams, became the actual driver of this decision, regardless of what Brian Wright said publicly for weeks after the finals ended. Stop, rewind. When an insider describes not just the existence of an internal conclusion, but its specific, blunt substance, and that substance matches independently reported public commentary already circulating about Fox's finals performance relative to Harper's, that is not a guess. That is confirmation the reporter has access to the same evaluation the front office itself used. Now, the skeptic, Stephen A. Smith, predictably erupted. You just gave this man $229 million, and weeks later you're trading him, and the Lakers are taking on $49 million a year for a guy who shot 34% in the finals, who got outplayed by a rookie in his own locker room? You're paying max money for a downgrade from a rookie. San Antonio's own numbers just proved it. And listen, Stephen A's core objection is legitimate. If San Antonio's own internal evaluation genuinely shows Harper outperforming Fox, that is a real signal any acquiring team has to seriously weigh, not dismiss. But here's the counter. A 5-game finals sample played through a documented ankle issue that limited his first step and change of direction for the entire series is an extremely noisy data set to build a permanent judgment on. Before that specific injury, across the full regular season, Fox posted efficient, all-star caliber numbers alongside a healthy Wembanyama. The Lakers are not betting on Finals Fox, they are betting on a full off-season of recovery, restoring the explosive downhill guard who earned that extension in the first place. Stephen A. is treating a small, injury-skewed sample as the whole truth. Pelinka is treating it as exactly what it is, a specific, temporary, medically explainable dip. Here's the part of this story that carries real irony. Deaaron Fox was traded to San Antonio in February of 2025 specifically to be the primary co-star next to a still developing Wembanyama. Now, roughly 18 months later, the exact same organization that made that bet is moving on, having decided a rookie fits the timeline better. And Fox is walking directly into another situation where he's meant to be the second star next to a completely different generational offensive talent, Luka Doncic instead of Victor Wembanyama. Same role, different genius, different city, same underlying question about whether he can actually be the second best player on a genuine title contender. But I owe you the honest risk. If that finals net rating gap genuinely reflects something more permanent than an ankle injury, if Fox's specific style of play simply doesn't maximize a dominant, ball-dominant big the way a more selfless connector like Harper does, the Lakers may be importing the exact same fit problem that just got San Antonio to move him. Let's also spend real time on the specific ankle injury detail because I think it's the single most important piece of context for evaluating whether San Antonio's internal conclusion actually holds up under scrutiny. Fox suffered a high ankle sprain late in the Western Conference Finals, an injury that visibly limited his first step and his ability to change direction for the remainder of that postseason run, including the entire Finals series against New York. Watch the tape from earlier in the playoffs before that specific injury, and the numbers look completely different. A much more explosive, much more efficient version of the same player operating alongside a healthy Wembanyama. That's not an excuse invented after the fact. Multiple beat reporters covering the Spurs flagged the injury in real time, well before the finals numbers became a national talking point, which tells you this wasn't a storyline manufactured retroactively to explain a bad series. Let's also talk about what a fresh start specifically means for a player whose confidence, by every account out of San Antonio's own locker room, took a real hit during that specific stretch. Playing hurt, watching a rookie outperform you on the sport's biggest stage, and then reading weeks of speculation about your own job security, all while your own front office publicly insists everything is fine. That's a genuinely difficult psychological environment for any veteran to operate in, let alone one trying to prove he's worth a fresh 9-figure commitment he just signed his name to. Walking into a completely new situation with a clean slate and a genuinely different surrounding context can matter enormously for a player whose most recent, most visible performance simply doesn't reflect his actual talent level when healthy and playing with real confidence again. Let's talk about the media landscape around this specific situation too, because I think it matters for understanding just how much pressure had already been building before today's news actually broke. Multiple major outlets ran headlines within days of each other explicitly framing a Fox trade as increasingly inevitable. Pieces with titles like "The Case for Trading, Fox is Getting Harder to Ignore," and speculative trade packages built around ending what one outlet bluntly called the Fox experiment. That's not one hot take from one contrarian columnist. That's a genuine, sustained media narrative that had been building for weeks, running directly parallel to San Antonio's public insistence that nothing was changing behind the scenes. When that much smoke builds up that consistently across that many independent competing outlets, it's rarely just noise generated for clicks. Let's talk about Stephon Castle's role in all of this, because I think it's an underrated piece of the roster puzzle that deserves real attention rather than a passing mention. With Castle, Harper, and Fox all occupying overlapping backcourt minutes throughout last season, San Antonio's crowded guard rotation was already a real documented tension point heading into this season, independent entirely of how the finals performance gap eventually played out. Moving Fox doesn't just resolve a talent evaluation question about who fits best next to Wembanyama. It resolves a genuine structural roster construction logjam that was always going to require a hard, uncomfortable decision regardless of how that specific series had gone. Multiple outlets had already flagged this exact logjam as a looming issue before the playoffs even started, which tells you San Antonio's front office wasn't simply reacting to 5 bad games. They were finally acting on a problem they'd been tracking for months.